right, everybody. Good morning to you and yours. And it is actually, well, no, technically for you East Coast people, it is afternoon now. But us Nashville people and you people still on the West Coast, it is morning. So good morning. I'm here with my new friend, and actually just found out we're now almost neighbors.
Yes, yes, very excited.
Recently located, the lone wolf himself, Mr. Tommy Vext. Tommy, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm a little. So I drove from California across country. I took it slow. I took about a 3 week drive because I stopped for a couple days in 4 or 5 cities. I just caught up with friends, and I kind of been on
Nice.
like this spiritual journey too. So I took like I wasn't supposed to leave LA for like 2 weeks, and I just got one day. I was like driving to the gym, and I turned around and got in my car and threw all of my stuff in my car and shipped the rest of it and just left. And that was it. I don't know why. And it's been great. It's been great. So,
So why Nashville?
because because music, you know what I mean. There's so much music here and so much culture, and I've traveled. I've always said I've been touring. You know, I'm from New York City,
Hmm.
and I moved to LA in 2006 to sign a deal with Roadrunner Records and my old metal band Divine Heresy, and I never left. And I lived in Vegas for 2017. I lived in San Francisco in 2008 for a year. Um, you know, and every time we're on tour, we always come to Nashville for the past 16 years. And I'm like, well, oh, I kind of like this place. And, I don't know. I finally just got in my car and was like, I'm going to come see if I like it. So,
And here you are.
yeah, it's not too bad so far, except I like live on a hill, and I didn't want to stop for gas because I was like so close to getting here. And my car is a new car, and electric cars are not precise with the computer. And it was like, oh, you have 40 miles to empty. And then when I parked on the hill, I guess the gas tank slanted, and then my car wouldn't start. So I had to go get a
Oh.
big 5 gallon drum and then go to the. It was just like I felt like a 16-year-old kid. I was like, who the hell runs out of gas?
Well, dude, I've been here now 2.5 years in Nashville, and I'm like you. I'm an East Coast boy. I'm from Philly originally,
I can
and
hear it.
yeah, it's best thing I ever did. It's like it's hard for me to even picture living back in that area now. Like
Yeah,
you're gonna love it here. It's
yeah.
really amazing. It's cool. It's laid back. People are really nice. You're gonna feel at home.
That's what I'm hoping. So I don't know. I'm just with everything going on in the world, it's like it's time to slow down my surroundings. Living in big cities, obviously, I think everybody the past 2 years who live in big cities are kind of over it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, totally.
my mother still lives in New York City,
Okay,
and yeah, and then I surprised her on Christmas, and we got her a house for in Florida, so she's gonna move to Orlando this year. So
nice.
that's really exciting for me. Yeah, I mean, like it's like my family. I grew up very poor, and so I've always tried
Mhm.
to take care of my mom as I got successful, and so it's a big like milestone thing for our family. So I'm glad that
Absolutely.
she's going to be able to retire and be in the sunshine and not have to worry about De Blasio or whatever psychopath is running the city. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Like, and I'm gonna be honest. Like, I know you. Of course, everybody knows you're from the huge zombie hit. Um, but I never really dove into your stuff, like your background and all that stuff. And then I'm like, real quick, I was like skimming through stuff. I'm like, oh shit, all right, he's a Brooklyn boy. I'm like, this is cool. In New York, my fiance, she's from Brooklyn and shit. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then I'm diving into all the other stuff. I'm like, all right, like we're on the same wavelength. I'm like, this is gonna be good. But we don't have to get in. I don't want to get into that stuff because
Yeah,
people
yeah.
get all freaked out and everything. So whatever.
I'm an
But
open
I'm
book,
wait.
man. I've been doing this for a long time, and so I put my whole life out there. Obviously, like I got, I'm not somebody who's shy about saying where I'm from, what I've overcome, what I feel like, my politics, like whatever. I think that open dialogue is super important, especially in a time where it feels almost like everything is censored. So we're not allowed to talk
Yeah.
about how we feel about things. We're not allowed to talk about our opinions and stuff. And so I feel like I feel like, especially as Americans, we it's kind of our responsibility to be more open now more than ever, and to
Hmm.
express, our rights as they're outlined in the Constitution. So whether it's like talking about personal things, or my relationship with overcoming drug addiction, or this, or like the family disease of alcoholism, or cancel culture, or whatever, it's like I think people are hungry to have real conversations.
Yeah, yeah, it's true, man. But it's also kind of a scary thing too, because people, and we see this so much with this whole thing, like especially friends, they're scared to um, have an adult conversation about it because they're going to get all pissed off, and then like
Yeah,
friendships are ruined. And it's like, as a matter of fact, like my best friend of like 45 plus years since kindergarten, and we played in band. Dude, we had a punk metal band in Philly for 16 years called the Dead Gerber Babies. And this guy he used to do like GG Allen stuff, like
yeah,
he was cutting himself on stage, naked on stage, and all this crazy stuff. But he's like the total opposite end of the spectrum in politics now. And I'm thinking to myself,
yeah,
you were anti-establishment. Now you're about the establishment, and I don't get it. And then a couple times we talk, I just immediately off the bat, I'm like, dude, you know what? I don't want to go there because you mean too much to me, and I don't want to fight with you. So let's
yeah,
just,
yeah. No, I
you
mean,
know,
I've obviously, I've, um, my former band members in Bad Wolves, like Doc and I were friends for 20 years.
wow.
You know what I mean? And so, we have, uh, our political beliefs have never really entered the chat room, because
Hmm.
he's very loud and vocal. He's always been very vocal about his political beliefs. Like, one of his favorite things to do would be like get drunk in the front lounge and argue with people about politics. And so I've never, for years, I just don't talk about it until 2020. And then it was kind of like I felt like I had to,
Hmm.
because especially as an African American, like I did not, I could not stomach what I was seeing,
Hmm.
on the news, with not only with what happened with George Floyd, but the way that it was capitalized on by the media, and
Right.
then the violence, and that doesn't solve anything. And then,
Hmm.
I started investigating, and then I realized, through some pretty not very intense investigation, that the money from the donations was going to a corporation that was owned by a political party. And so I exposed that in 2020, and almost like I think June of 2020, and I got ostracized. Like, people were sending me death threats, and then now you fast forward 2 years later, and now there is an investigation into the missing $80 million. So
Right.
it's like they crucify people in the, if you're first to realize there's a scam going on, they absolutely crucify you.
Hmm.
And it sucks because I sat down and had a podcast, with Hawk Newsom, who's the founder of BLM. He and his sister founded Black Lives Matter,
Okay.
and the actual grassroots movement. And what they do is, in the Bronx, they build recreational centers for inner city African American youth, and like they teach them, and they teach them sports, and they integrate them into classes with better explain their history, all positive things. And they make these people out to be like militia and
Mm.
militants. And he's like, this is not what we're about. And we have varying views, right? Like, we don't have the same views in law enforcement. uh
Hmm.
but we get to sit down and have conversations that actually produce solutions. And that's the problem, I feel like, politically in this country. And I think, as far as social media and media, they almost want us to fight one another and hate one another. And the more that we do that, the more that we win. And so, I've I look at Bad Wolves, and I look at my band, and I spent years slaving away, pushing that band, all those number one singles I wrote. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, those were not collaborative efforts with the band members, and everyone knows this stuff. Um, and it's not so much about what I did. It was that I was so, you know, well, it's coming now. It's not the case, but it's like you're like people you work for and you love, and you take care of them, and then you're, because you don't think like them, you're replaceable.
Yeah.
So I've been kind of doing this, and then anybody who's gone through losing a family member or a relationship, or haven't had drama because they said their opinion on whatever side of the aisle it is, I highly recommend meditating on
Hmm.
forgiveness. I've literally spent like a week in Austin doing every morning, waking up, and as soon as I wake up, going straight into meditation with a meditation teacher. And
Wow.
I visualize every day a different person that hurt me, and I hug them and tell them I love them. And
Wow.
it's like a 45-minute meditation, and then I let them go. And so, I didn't realize how hurt and betrayed I felt. And what happens is that I think as men, we are not really we don't really promote dealing with our emotions, but
Hmm.
it causes blockage and it causes resentment. And then when we're walking around with those resentments, our lives are it almost puts like a gray filter on life. And so I've been releasing all that, and the colors are getting brighter. And for people who are creative and want to do art or music, or think outside the box, or want to be inspired as entrepreneurs, it's really important to process the resentments and not carry them. I think I used to think that when I was a young man, I believed that resentments, I could use them like fuel,
Hmm.
but it's really just like pouring gasoline on yourself. There's other ways
Right.
to be inspired, and as you become more mature, I think men, as we get older, we value peace, more than
True.
the fire. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But going through that, that's a tough thing for anybody to go through. And you've been, you touched on it real quickly, but you've been living that, sober life now for a few years. I guess how long's it been? Like 5, 6 years, maybe.
Oh no, it'll be. I turned 13 years sober.
Oh
In
wow. Okay.
May. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But even 13 years, which is tremendous. Does because me, I'm not sober, but when I get upset or hurt, I turn the two things from being a young kid to still today at 52 years old almost, I turn to alcohol and food.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
my crutches. So how like at this point do you still, when you go through in a hurt like that, not want to turn back to that?
Well, so I used to be obese, right? So I was 330 pounds, not working out.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I lost over 100 pounds. Yeah, and so my bass player too, Kevin, lost 180 pounds. He's a male model now. He's one of the highest paid male models on TikTok and Instagram. And
Oh,
he used to be, yeah, he 350 pounds, something like that.
okay.
And he was a social worker, and he wanted to like grow his hair long and lose the weight. And it was the same thing with me. That's why we really connect on that level. So I learned to replace the food addiction with working out.
Wow.
And so my health and fitness journey started before, and then I got into recovery. So what I learned in sobriety is that meeting makers make it. So like if and obviously I'm an alcoholic and an addict, right? So I will go to a meeting. If I can't go to a meeting because COVID, like there's Zoom meetings all the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
um and then I think it's as simple as this, like, whenever I am hurting, helping somebody else, even like a small anything, just at one, like every day, because I was really going through it a while back, and I was like, I'm just gonna help one person every day. And it didn't matter if I helped a little old lady cross the street, for example,
Okay.
or if I gave a homeless veteran $20, which to me is like, it's not, it's not nothing, but
Right.
it's not going to kill me to do, once in a
Hmm.
while. Um, to just like calling somebody and calling people and checking up on them, I think it gets us out of ourselves. And then it's because when we're in self, like, especially I know that I am like, you know, I am the manufacturer of my own world.
Hmm.
So when I get into a dark place like that, where I want to comfort myself with food or alcohol, sex is another thing. It's I think that we can all pivot towards these vices. But when I find that I do something good for another person, I get a lot more relief, and it lasts
Mm,
longer. And I
that's
get a
amazing.
sense of self-esteem. That I was told this guy David Martell, he's like a big he's a sober dude, and he's like a big, like, he sells gold. He's like this big guru in California, and
Okay.
he was like, he told me this. He's like kind of chubby, short Jewish guy. He's like, Tommy, if you want to have good self esteem, you have to do esteemable acts. And I never lost that. It's like, oh shit, like, oh yeah, go help somebody. Stop thinking about yourself, kid.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wow. That's
yeah, so
amazing, man.
yeah, and it works in especially of times of fear too. Like I had friends who had health complications and neighbors who were elderly when COVID first happened. So I like, when it first happened and everyone really was like, oh, we really might all die. I was making trips to the grocery store because I'm like, I'm healthy. I'll go pick up groceries for these people,
Wow.
and drop them off once a week. I'm like, and I was happy to do it because otherwise I would have just sat in the house,
Right.
and watched Netflix because the gyms were closed and everything was closed.
Wow. It was a crazy time we went through. It's still kind of hard to believe we all went through that.
It's crazy how fast it was over. Like it lasted way too long, and then one day they were just like yesterday in New York, they like I think in New York and California they dropped all the mandates. Just
Yeah. It's
like it's science. I'm like, okay. I haven't seen Fauci in weeks. Like he's hiding under a rock, hoping that like he's not in trouble.
oh, that's a whole nother story right there. Um, but
I
all
think
right, so,
that too many people. I think it went on as long as it did because people had stocks in those companies that were making the stuff, that were making the cream. It's like or the
yeah.
wax, and so they kept it going so they could. It was a money laundering thing. You know what I mean? So as long as they pumped our tax dollars into those companies, the stocks would go up. And then if you look now, all of them, all the politicians sold those stocks, and now
Mm.
and now yeah, I follow I'm on Truth Social, and I follow Nancy Pelosi's stocks.
Oh,
There's a whole channel
okay.
just about it. It's hilarious. It's because she's an insider trading genius. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
how's this
right.
lady made $64 million? She's the Speaker of the House. This is insanity.
You know what was funny too? Like, I mean, I was hearing it here, like when I'm out in my car, like on the Nashville radio stations, like 2 times an hour, you're hearing vaccine commercials, and
Oh
there
yeah.
you don't hear them no more. It's like all of a sudden it's just like boop. It's like you said, just everything just boop, dropped and stopped.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there. They also censored a lot of people. Like we obviously Topher and I released a song "Trust the Science" like about
Hmm.
2 weeks ago. When if it came out a year ago, they'd probably put us in jail. You know,
Right.
they'd kick us off everything. They're like, "Oh, you guys can't." It's like, dude, you know, it's just kind of crazy to me how. Sorry, I got David Harris Jr. just called me. It's crazy to me how it just switched,
Yes.
and now everything is about Russia and Ukraine,
Hmm.
and like, you know, I'm a nerd, and I actually studied the color revolution and the orange revolution, and I know a lot about Ukraine, and I dated a girl who's from Ukraine, and I've also played, I've got a platinum record in Russia, and I've been to Russia
Wow.
3 times, and you know what we're being once again, the ball is being rolled out the same way, and everything we're being told is not
Hmm.
this not reality. And so it's I've had people yell at me, they're like, oh, you're siding with Putin. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just saying both these guys are crazy, and we shouldn't
Hmm.
send our I don't want to send our troops over there to fight this bullshit
Yeah.
because it's not our business and it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And the UN and NATO and the US, and I've never heard of you know of the banks not doing, MasterCard and Visa. Like, we're not going to do business with this nation. They did with Iraq. They
Right.
did in Libya. They don't stop. you could still use a Visa card in the Congo. Like it doesn't have anything to do. There's a
No
foul.
McDonald's in Russia.
No, I know I mean, oh no, there's a foul plot afoot, and the thing is, most people don't know that Ukraine is not a democracy. They haven't implanted government. They have since 2004, and they actually manipulated the elections in a very similar way to some of the things that we saw in 2020. So it's very interesting to see how people who don't even know where Ukraine are and like, we stand with Ukraine. I'm like, dude, the Ukrainian government killed 4,500 protesters when Zelensky became president because these kids marched against him and they just shot them to death. And he's on TV like, oh yeah, he's a hero. I'm like, and you won't hear about this on the news. You hear about it. You hear about it from the people who lived it, and then they scrub that stuff from the internet.
Yeah.
Because now they want him to be viewed as he's like some hero. He's a deplorable human being who killed his own people. So it's like, this is like a Saddam Hussein and, Gaddafi got into a fight. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah, it's just like,
right?
Yeah, it's like if two assholes in school just beat each other up, but like, just let them, whatever. Like, I don't want to get involved in that,
No.
And the gas prices are crazy.
Yeah, please.
Well, you know that we only import 3% of our oil from Russia, so it wouldn't constitute the tripling and quadrupling of the gas prices. It's because the oil companies, this administration is allowing the oil companies to take advantage of us.
Exactly.
Because they're also now, if you look at Nancy Pelosi and all their they're in Exxon and they're all in the oil business. They're playing a game.
Yeah.
So they're allowing this stuff to go up and then getting in and cashing out. It's just they're basically using the country like
as their own ATM machine.
Well, yeah, it's like it's Vegas, and they know the table's rigged.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like the dealer is like taking all of our money, and there's one person who's like, who's like a ringer, and it's basically they're just taking everyone's money and reallocating it to them, and these two assholes split it at the end of the night.
Did you ever think about going into politics to try to be like the honest politician?
I mean, I don't really want. I feel like no, I would never want to run for office. I don't want to deal with it. I'm also not. Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, dude. Like, I'm also not like, these people. If somebody showed up to my house with a camera, I might shoot them on my property. They'd be like, what I mean? Like, I don't have any kind of like. I don't even. I especially don't view the mainstream media, the personnel of the mainstream media. I don't view them as human beings.
Yeah.
Like I don't. So it's not to say that anything bad should happen to them, but I'm just like, I can't guarantee that I wouldn't go to jail if I ran for office. So I'm just like, I'm too thugged out, I just don't want to deal with it. But I have friends who are, a little bit more, sane than I am, who are running, But I think but to be honest, like that's what needs to happen. Is people like, I think people like Ian Smith, who's running in New Jersey against Murphy. He has the Tillis gym. They stayed open, and they tried to hit them with millions of dollars of fines and shut them down. And they open up the gym, and they've had hundreds of thousands of members in and out of that gym every day with no reported cases. And they've tested people, and it's been fine. And so it completely defied. Because they're smart and they did research and they know about real science, not just the science. They left it up to the constitutional decision of their members. And what happened is their gym flourished. It's like the most packed gym in that area. And, and now he's going to run for office. Graham Allen is another person Graham Allen is just like, he's a political social media guy, and he's going to run in South Carolina. He actually just spoke before Trump a couple days ago. It was Friday night when Trump was in South Carolina. And then you have, Carrie Lake is a friend of mine who's running in Phoenix, and she was in anger on the news. And she literally on air quit after like 20 or 30 years of being on air and delivering the news. She's like, I can no longer do this. and she was just gonna quit. And then, I guess the Republican Party approached her about running. And so you're seeing regular citizens that are not in
Mm-hmm.
politics actually, and this is how it used to be in this country.
Yeah.
It wasn't like close knit career politicians.
Mm-hmm.
It was people who were members of their own community. And that's what we need. We need people. We need parents to be
Mm-hmm.
getting involved in the school boards because they're destroying our children.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this: like, I don't know anyone. I don't know any respectable African American who thinks critical race theory is a good idea. And this is why, because it teaches white people and white children. Children don't know about race, and
Yeah.
and listen, I'm a believer in God, and I've died and had a near death experience, and this is a shell. There's no race in God's kingdom when we cross
Mm-hmm.
over to the next side. And if we all treated each other as such, things would be a lot different. And I don't need white people to feel ashamed of themselves for something that they didn't do or their
Right.
ancestors did 400 years ago. I don't want to feel ashamed for things I did when I was a drug addict because I changed
Right.
my life. So I wouldn't want to feel ashamed for something my great 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 grandparents did. I
Mm-hmm.
never even met them. And on top, and additionally, what it does is that as a minority, it teaches minorities that they can never become anything in this world because of the color of their
Right.
skin. And that's the racism part. So now you're taking any kid who has a dream and saying, well, you can't do this because you're black. Well, we had a black president for two
Mm-hmm.
terms. So if Obama can be president, then I can be president.
Mm-hmm.
So which one is it? Because it's the same party. Is they switch what they want to push,
Yeah.
as it's convenient to them. And
Exactly.
so I'm sick and tired of this. I call it manufactured racism because you know America's biggest problem in this country is not racism at all. It's
Mm-hmm.
corrupt politicians, and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually communism, because
Right.
communism is defined as when government and privatized corporations collude together on behalf of each other and not the people they're
Exactly.
supposed to be governing. So, I think a lot of parents and a lot of local people need to step up on the local level and get
Mm-hmm.
involved in the school systems, because there's it's all like J. Edgar Hoover would be rolling over in his grave if he saw the things going on right now. And dude,
Exactly.
he was a fucking crazy asshole and a racist, but he hated communists. He dedicated his life to fighting communism, despite all of his weird ass shit. But this whole ideology of socialism that's being pushed it's part of a bigger problem,
Yeah.
and it's part of like creating a world where everybody is you can't own anything, like all the stuff that they're talking about, like the World Economic Forum and stuff. It's just,
It's ridiculous.
I don't want to get too deep into it. Too late.
So now, I don't know if you realize this or not, but it seems like you're really not too big on the whole social media front. But like when we first got this interview booked, I went to go put a post on Instagram, and I go to tag you in it, and like there's like 20, 30 Tommy Vext pages. I'm like, he might be the most fake accounts of one person I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's like these Nigerian and Indian people who catfish my fans, but I have so there's a couple of things. When I was going through last year, when I was going through a legal thing, like a lawsuit,
Right.
there was a company that was hired to report all my content, and this is like, I'll give you an example. When Gina Carano got canceled from Disney, those weren't
Mm-hmm.
real people on Twitter. They pay a lot of money to these third world countries who just have people writing comments on computers, and then they also, for every 10 comments is one human, and
Okay.
they basically, that's how they manufactured cancel culture, because they basically try to almost crucify you. It's like a digital crucifixion, and like
Mm,
they create a mob and they all go after you, but really nobody cares. People don't care that much, and so it gives you this illusion. What it does is it gives the power, those who are powerful, justification in the public arena to destroy you.
right.
So there are similar ones that will do stuff like this, where they'll people will pay them and put them on retainer to make sure that there's constant fake profiles harassing you, right?
Okay.
Or they'll report like my original Instagram was deleted in like November or December at 320,000 followers, and so my backup is up to like 135,000 already.
Wow.
um and they basically reported everything I ever posted about anything, you know and so I had to call a friend who works at Instagram, and they're like actively trying to put it back up. But they had all these weird questions. They're like, "Are you a drug dealer?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "You got reported for selling drugs on Instagram." I'm like, "I've literally been sober for 13 years. Like, what are you talking about?" So these people just put in. They know exactly what to do to get you taken down by the
Mm,
algorithm, and
gotcha.
so yeah, and so it's just a form of digital warfare. My previous Instagram profile was very, very dangerous because my engagement was massive. I had more engagement than people with millions and millions of followers.
Wow.
And I would post on a story and it would get 80,000 views on a hot day. And so
Mm,
I was able to sell out my entire summer tour last year just from posting on Instagram.
damn, dude.
Yes. So like I didn't, that's the thing, the power of social media. And so the record labels don't want this, because then you don't need them, right? Like,
Right.
for example, I just got the Billboard charts on Trust the Science. Now, it's not a radio single. It's too heavy for radio,
Okay.
and then like Liquid Metal on Sirius XM won't play it because of my politics, right? There's people
Right.
there who don't like what I stand for politically, and so they won't play it. And that's happening. That happens at some places. But the song didn't, like, we didn't push it to radio. It wasn't meant to go to radio. It's just a street track. It's the first song to come out. The song landed at number 2 on iTunes on the Friday it came out, behind
Wow.
Tool, and it stayed there for 3 days. And you know, the top 4 songs was Tool, uh, Trust the Science, Thunderstruck from AC/DC,
Okay.
and because it was in a movie, and then Nirvana, Something in the Way, because it's in the new Batman movie. So you
Okay.
have the rock charts, and like this is an important thing that I note, because the record labels are not understanding the audience. They are not allowing. They're suffocating the artists. They're not allowing the conservative artists to say anything. And what
Hmm.
happens is that the fans don't. There's no new music to listen to. Nobody's saying anything. We are living in the rock is the most watered down it has ever been,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in a time where you would think that these records are the most important they could possibly be for in American history, because typically we're the genre of music over the last 30 or 40 years where whenever there's war or whenever there's poverty or wherever there's injustice, heavy metal, rock, punk rock, all that stuff, that's when that stuff shines.
Hmm.
And I look around at my peers, or who used to be my peers. I've really lost a lot of respect for a lot of people in the genre. And I'm like,
Wow.
all of you are silent. You know, they're silent, and it's disgraceful. And honestly, like, nobody should buy records from anybody who supports wokeness, because you're contributing to the destruction of America. And if these artists don't wake up, or they're just doing what they're told, then you whatever, then the consequence should be they don't have the support of if they don't have the same values. Like, I'm not gonna go buy a record from somebody who talks about raping women, because it's fucking insane to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't support that. So I'm not gonna go buy a record from somebody that supports raping this country. You know,
Good
and
point.
and 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 I landed at 22 on Billboard with a single that was just passed around like a demo tape. you
Wow.
know so with no radio, no record label, no management, we just started doing PR like 2 weeks late.
I mean, you're totally like doing a whole renegade thing basically yourself.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. I don't want to be a part of that system. You know,
So how is I mean have because you I mean you were on labels in the you know the last so many years. So how is it now for you to be taking? I mean, because this is a major on taking to do all this stuff yourself. So how is it for you to handle that stuff now?
it's great. You know, the thing is that so there's like so there are like there are certain publications like they will refuse to cover me
Sure.
because if they do, they've been threatened that they won't get ad money from certain record labels who
Right.
are anti-conservative. So, and
Hmm.
this is another thing people need to understand: there are record labels who are telling the media, if you cover Tommy Vext and let him talk about his beliefs, we will not invest our advertising dollars into your company, and that will punish you. You
Yep.
know, and so this is another reason why we like, you know, I to be honest, like I can't even see. I only buy independent artist stuff now because now I'm wise to the game. And if my
Hmm.
friends come out with records, I'll just rip it. I don't care. I'm just gonna rip it off the internet. I've been buying records from everybody I support for years, but I won't support the machine anymore. And it's just so super easy. So I'm like, you know what? Like at this point, I feel like it's almost like the gas companies and it's like the politicians, like the labels and Hollywood need to suffer monetarily. If we don't punish them financially, then then they're going to keep doing this, and
Yeah.
they're going to keep supporting radicalism and all this disgusting shit.
It's ugly. It's freaking ugly in every form of business that's going on. What's going on out there? So now, like the music itself, "Trust the Science" is your first official single out there.
Mhm.
Um, did you approach, doing, now that rewind even before that? So Lone Wolf, is it a band? Is it your solo band? Is it a solo pro? What is it?
Well, I just rebranded. I didn't want to come out with like Tommy Vext. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Um, so it's almost like if I look at my predecessors or people who I looked up to when I was growing up, like Maynard sings for Tool, and
Hmm.
then also has Pussifer and also has a Perfect Circle.
Okay.
Chino from Deftones has Team Sleep and Crosses.
Okay.
Phil Anselmo has Pantera, then Down and
Hmm.
Super Joint Ritual, and he's
Okay.
had like 200 different bands.
Right.
So the Lone Wolf is just is like a moniker, spinoff, and it's also I am the predominant writer for my former band, and I collaborate with studio writers.
Okay.
So all those songs that we wrote were collaborations, and then the band would just play them live. So there are many songs on my record. That's my record's called Grand Theft Audio. So many of the songs on this record were written in 2020 for the Bad Wolves record.
Okay.
So I retained those, and we had a settlement, and I got most of my songs, and they got some of them and re-sang them, and and they needed a couple hits, so what's fair is fair. And yeah, so that's kind of the whole principle behind it. Is I'm continuing to be creative and move forward in the sound that I was creating over the past couple of years. And I think those guys, their new record's cool. It doesn't sound like Bad Wolves. It sounds very different. Even the songs that I had written that they redid, it just sounds different. So
Hmm.
I fully support them in their creative endeavors, and I think that I do see that outside of politics. I think that there was some resentment from band members, and they wanted to have their write their songs and be that, and
Right.
now they can all do that, and I don't have to really I don't have to deal with the interjections of their resentments. And my band guys are totally cool. Like Neil's ripping solos on 6 7 songs, and
Nice.
Dusty's my guitar player, but he also plays drums. So him and Mike have contributed drums, to the record. And my drummer is also a videographer who's worked on all the videos. So
Okay.
everybody is like brings different creative energy to the table, and and then Kevin's like my workout partner, so we're when I was in LA we work out almost 3 or 4 times a week, and you
Nice.
know and that's kind of how it goes. So it's all those guys are like they're all the homies. We are all politically aligned to varying degrees, and it makes it a lot easier. There's never been any fights on tour. There's never been drama,
Right.
and we've toured together for a year already, and nothing. There's just no problems ever,
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
so yeah, and everybody's healthy. None of them drink. We all go to the gym together every day, and so I finally am like I kind of raised the standard when I started interviewing band people. The number one thing was, do you do drugs and do you drink?
Mm.
Because I can't be the only sober guy anymore.
Right.
And I just can't do it. And that stuff is poison. And whether people want to admit it or not, in this environment, it's a lot of special people who are creative and artists and musicians. Dude, they can't drink and do drugs
Mm.
because it destroys them. And so I think that I think this lineup is it's like it feels like a family.
That's awesome.
And these guys really back me up. And when the industry was trying to talk shit, they're like, we know this guy, you
Right.
know, and that's been the case with a lot of people. Like, everyone who knows me is like, yeah, like, nah, you know.
That's cool though, dude. Now, do you actually like before you even get in a room and play with them? Do you do an interview with them first?
Yeah, Mike and I knew each other because he worked for All That Remains.
Okay.
He shot some content for Bad Wolves in like Alabama and stuff. And he Mike is a really hard worker, and he makes drum videos like on his YouTube and on his Instagram like once a week. So he'd be doing covers and just
Mm.
like putting them out and filming them because he's a videographer. So he'd have all this sick content. I'm like, yo, this guy's, and he's a beast. Like he's like super into bodybuilding,
Awesome.
and it's just super positive dude. So that was kind of a no brainer. Dusty, I've like seen him around because he was in like the Sumerian band scene, and he's a producer, and he plays every instrument. So he
Wow.
originally reached out about drums, but I already had gotten Mike, and I was like, well, like we really got along, and I was like, well, can you play bass or guitar? And he was like, yeah, I play everything. And I was like, well, the original tour that we did, we only did Texas all the way around,
Okay.
and it was a 4 piece, so it was me and Mike and Neil, and he played bass on that tour. And Kevin actually came to one of the shows in Dallas because we were at FitCon, and he was like, "I think I want to try out for this band," because he used to be in metal bands.
Wow.
For years he's been playing bass in like extreme metal bands, which nobody even knew. So then Neil, I toured with Neil because he played guitar in Diamante. So me and Neil toured
Mm.
the whole country like 3 times together.
Wow.
And Neil is such a good guitar player. Like he would be backstage in the opening band giving guitar lessons to headlining guitar players.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that's how good he is. And so when he randomly just hit me up, um, before he even heard I was putting something together. And he was like, "Hey man, like I saw that you left Bad Wolves." I'm like, "It's a bummer." He's like, "I actually left Diamante, and if you know anybody who's looking for a guitar player, let me know." And I was like, "Well, I guess I am." And he was like, "Oh, for real?" And so it just kind of everything. That's the thing though, that the universe will. I guess Providence will provide. That's what they say in recovery.
Hmm.
Like, and the universe will always, it's a leap of faith. It's walking away from a multi-million-dollar band that you created and going off into your own, and also having arrows flung at you and all this,
Hmm.
drama and stuff, and people saying you don't get to, they basically, their opinion is that if you don't believe what they believe, you don't get to exist.
Right.
um and still last year we did like 2 tours, and we grossed like $980,000.
Oh shit.
Yeah, which is like, it seems like a lot, but when you're paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the bus and the gas,
Yeah. Of course.
everybody's salaries, like I didn't get any money, but everybody else did. Like quite literally, I didn't even, I have like 10 other different forms of income. So, and that's another thing that musicians don't learn too, is you have to diversify your income. You can't just
Absolutely.
rely on one thing. Like, I don't care if you like have to bartend and drive Uber and do this and do that, because the labels can only control you when they financially control you.
Hmm.
And what they'll do is they'll run up bills and stuff without running it by you to make you in debt, and then all of a sudden, like, they're still recouping. It doesn't matter if you sell millions of records, they find ways that they're still recouping. And the whole point is to control you, because as long as you're on the road, you're making them money. So,
Hmm.
and then they shame you if you feel burnt out. It's
Mm.
a very dark industry. So if you're
Hmm.
financially solvent, you have good stock options, like whatever. If you have money tucked away, they can't really do that to you. You're like, no, I'm okay. Like, whoa, well, what about this? And then they'll try to pick off weaker members, like financially weak members of your team, which is what happened in my last band. Like people who were absolute financial catastrophes, it was
Ooh,
easy for them to turn because they don't have any other options.
interesting.
It's very malicious and very.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like Game of Thrones. It's very, very intricate and psychologically manipulative, and um, not a party.
Do you think you would ever go back to a label, or you think you're just going to be independent now the rest of your career?
No, I don't think there are. I don't think all labels are bad. I just I just have I think there are some people. I have friends who I have a buddy who's the CEO of a big label, and he's a sweetheart. You know what I mean? And I have 3 or 4 offers right now. I just don't. I think that if I signed with a label now, they would try to get me on, oh, you damaged your career, and lowball me. So
Yeah.
I'd rather put out a record, and I prayed about this, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I'm like, I already have I have paperwork to show, like, hey, I sell this much. I sell these many tickets. I sell these many shirts. Like, I know my value. And
Hmm.
so this is in 2021 was a year where I was dealing with shadow bans and deleted profiles and this, that, the other, and
Right.
no album. I wasn't allowed to release any music. I wasn't allowed to post music. It was getting pulled down, everything. So now, to me, I'm like, well, I'll just put out one song a month. And I have 40 songs,
Wow.
so I could go the next 40 months putting out one song. And if it does as good as, Trust the Science, I'm pretty good. And then I own I own all my masters, and you shouldn't want to get rid of your masters. If you already have a platform, you want to keep your masters, because that's going to pay you for the rest of your life. I
Yeah.
don't want anybody to have those. I made a huge mistake initially in just not understanding. Well, actually, it's also, if you're an unsigned band and you haven't made any waves and you haven't done anything, yeah, it's going to be hard, right? It's
Right.
going to be hard. It's going to be more appealing, but there are other ways to do it now, which I realize, like the internet, the opportunity to create virality through your content, is that's what it shows, and the labels look at that stuff and they're like, oh,
Hmm.
So I think for me, you know, um, I just think I like peace. I don't need people who are not as. The one thing that was really hard was having people who are not intelligent yell at me and tell me what to do from
Right.
from a management standpoint. Like, I don't particularly respond to people who are not more intelligent than me, and it's very easy for me to assess. And in business, most musicians are not successful businessmen.
Yeah.
I came into Bad Wolves owning my own company and owning a sober companion firm, and
Hmm.
making over $250,000 a year. So I went from making $250,000 to making $37,000 the first year I was in the band, and Zombie blew up.
Wow.
And thank God I like saved my money and stuff. And I was like, yo, this ain't it.
Hmm.
and they're constantly being berated and trying to be manipulated and abused by people who they talk to you like you're an idiot. And I'm like, how much money do you make? Like, what have you done? Like, and it's
Right.
not that money is everything, but as an entrepreneur, we think a
Yeah.
certain way. I come from absolute poverty. And again, remember, I was a homeless crackhead 13 years ago. So I
Damn,
literally
dude.
had no family, no nothing, no money, nothing. And I'm like, I created this from zero. And I'm like, you're trying to tell me that you know better and you're a dumb shit, And I'm like, look at your life. So I look at how people live and I'm like, dude, you're not qualified to tell, like, the way that you live is not, you're not qualified to tell me what to do. You're not winning. So I have a saying, like, for anybody in music or any business, don't take directions from people who have never been where you're going,
I love it.
because they're just going to get you lost,
Yeah, that's so true.
and that you'll become a difficult artist if you have boundaries. But you can't tell somebody who's been in recovery and in therapy I've been in therapy for 13 years. I
Wow.
know what boundaries are. So when people try to trespass them, I just say no. I'm like, no, that's okay. No, no, thank you.
And people don't like to hear that word.
Not in that industry because it's a slave master industry,
Mm,
and so it's a different kind of slavery. They, instead of shackling you
right.
in a cotton field, what they do is, they manipulate you, and the shackles are poverty, right? So they keep you,
Mm,
so they put you in a place of debt and scarcity, and that's an easy way
hmm.
to control you. And most people don't understand how those systems work, and I do, and so therefore it's very hard. I'm what they call an uppity Negro, you know what I mean? Like, they don't. So like, we got to get rid of him. He's gonna start. Everyone's starting to realize what's going on here, and they're gonna get pissed at us. You know what I mean?
I should ask you this question because it's been driving me crazy, and I've been hearing it again on national radio. Like, an artist new single come out on the local. It's only on this one local rock station that I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever artist it is, their new single drops, comes out, and every time that song gets played, right at the beginning, the little bumper comes on and says, "This song is brought to you by RCA Music," or "This song is brought to you by Sony Music." And I'm thinking to myself, is this like the new form of payola where they just basically paid for this saying, and they just paid for this as an advertisement, a commercial, and they're paying the radio station to play this single? I mean, is this a way around it now? And I'm like,
It never went away.
right.
Instead, they don't just. It's illegal to just pay a station to play a song, but you can buy advertising space. So
Exactly.
that
That's
is
the way around it now.
it's the loophole in the law. So, listen, I have investors. I have money. Like, I could potentially dump $250,000 into pushing a single. It will make a lot of people very upset.
Sure.
But I have to look at the if I'm doing this well without any promotion. Is it worth it to take on an investor and invest into putting the song on the radio to number one?
Right.
Because right now you can ask to be on the radio, but they don't want to lose advertising dollars from competing
Hmm.
companies who will try to blacklist you, but no one's going to say no to money.
Exactly.
So what they try to do is try to make it so that you have to sign to another label who will also do payola as a competitor. And it's like, it's unfortunate, but I just, I don't know how valuable it is anymore. I think that, with my social media is growing so fast. I
Hmm.
think it's going to be back to, hundreds of thousands in no time. I'll probably be at 500,000 by the end of the year on Instagram, and probably like at least 250,000 on Facebook. And then it doesn't matter,
Hmm.
because every post I post, it's like you're reaching more people than you would if
Yeah.
your song was being paid to play overnight. And but I don't know, like, again, like, it's a money game,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't, and I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with it, to be honest with you. I don't really, I think that, not as many people listen to the radio as they used to.
Hmm.
and the stations don't have the it's like if the car commercial, they can't charge the extreme high prices they used to 20 years ago,
Yeah.
because they're not getting that much reach, because
Hmm.
so many people listen to their phones, or they're listening to iPods, or
Yeah.
they listen to podcasts or whatever.
Hmm.
So I get it, and so I understand. In order for radio to continue to exist, this is something that is a necessary evil, but it can also be used for bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so
Sorry. So Trust the Science is out. The single's out. The video's out. Song freaking rocks.
thanks.
Um, and so you're saying you have like 40 more singles. Do you think? I mean, is the end game ever to put out a full package of an EP or an album, or are you just going to keep doing the single thing?
No, I mean, I'm gonna probably put an album out in July, so I'll
Okay.
probably drop the whole record in July. But I'm gonna put out a song every month until then,
Hmm.
and then even when the record comes out, I might still continue to release songs.
Nice.
Yeah, it's called the waterfall. It's like it just never ends.
Yeah.
And then after I put out, after my Spotify has 40 songs on it and that catalog is out, maybe then I'll sign with a record label.
Hmm.
You know, because it's like I'm not gonna get into business with somebody who's gonna like promise to build this and then give me low end, especially
Right.
when I'm financially I'm fine.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I mean? Like I can afford to put because I'm smart. I can afford to invest in my own self.
Hmm.
Um, so it doesn't make sense to take on a partner, because anything I would get offered now, I'm on a low. So
Hmm.
basically, building everything up from here makes more sense. And then, I might turn around and be like, yeah, I don't really want to. Like, why? Look how lucrative we've been on alone.
Right.
It doesn't really make sense to me.
Now, earlier in the interview, when we were talking about the whole lone wolf, and this is the new band, and you had mentioned people like a Phil Elsama who's got like all these different things. Is that something that you're saying that you could end up doing too, where you might do other projects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do a lot of features. Like, there's songs I'm supposed to do with Struggle Jennings and Jelly Roll, and I want to do a song with Caitlin Curtis. I want to do a song with Ryan Upchurch, and these are all like Nashville, like country
Yeah,
rap hybrid guys. I
I
want to do.
freaking love that Jelly Roll tune.
Oh
I
yeah,
can't get enough of that single.
he crushes it, bro. He absolutely crushes it. I want to do something with Tom McDonald. I want to work with the Marine rapper, a lot of the conservative rappers. Bryson Grace is a real dope MC. Me and Topher talked about doing a whole record together.
Sweet.
Like a whole rap rock record, because why not? Oh, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
yeah. So
That's awesome,
yeah.
dude. This has been this is honestly I didn't know what to expect.
Oh,
I didn't
everybody
know.
says that. That's because
I didn't know.
they paint me as a monster in the press. Like he's crazy.
I, I even said to your PR when I first got it booked. I said, "How is he?" I said, "Is he like nutso or?" And she's like, "I don't know yet." She goes, "We really haven't talked." I'm like, "All right." I'm a little scared. I don't know what to expect. But as soon as you got on, like before we came live, I was like, "All right, this dude's cool as shit. We're good."
Yeah, but you could see what they do to people. Like, right when they don't like what you say, they boogeyman you, and it's like
Yeah.
just like I'm like, "Oh, okay, you know. And I've done some interviews with people who last week, some press with people who I've already interviewed when I was within Bad Wolves, and they were like, "Yo," they're like, "We've talked like 5 times. Like, it's crazy what they were saying about you." I'm like, "Yeah, I know.
That's
Yeah,
crazy, man.
yeah, that's nuts." But whatever.
Yeah. Do your thing, dude. Work your magic.
All right, man. Good to talk to
You are winning.
you.
Where's the best place we should send everybody to find out more about you and
Yeah, you can. So if you go to Instagram, uh,
mhm.
my Instagram is at free Tommy Vext, just one word.
Okay.
And then Facebook is Tommy is Vexed, facebook.com/Tommy is Vexed. I'm on Truth Social as Tommy Vext,
Okay.
and I have a website called TommyVexedOfficial.com. And if you sign up for my newsletter on there, I'm going to be giving away a free song in the next couple of days. So
Oh,
go,
sweet.
yeah, man.
Awesome. Dude, this has been awesome. welcome to Nashville. Hopefully, we run into each other at some point.
Yeah, man. I'm sure I'll see you on campus.
Sounds good, man. Take care of yourself, dude.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.